Hello friends, welcome to Banking Frontiers. We are having a wonderful panel discussion today and our topic is cloud, from risks to rewards. Clouds, as we all know, is a very happening technology all over the world, and the financial sector, particularly in India, is looking forward to adopt cloud, making sure that all kinds of risks are taken care of so that the rewards can be taken advantage of. To discuss this topic, we have a panel discussion with bankers, with cooperative banks, with leading cooperative banks from India. And we will discuss this. We'll try to look at this whole thing in qualitative and quantitative perspectives and see how the migration to cloud can actually benefit the banking sector. So friends, that is the topic. I am Manoj Agrawal. I'm the editor at Banking Frontiers magazine. And for this channel, Banking Frontiers Live, I welcome you all. May I briefly request everyone to just introduce themselves, their name, their role, their organization. Then we'll get into the actual discussion. So let's start with the lady in the group.
Ladies, thank you, Manoj. And I also would like to thank Banking Frontier to have me on this panel. I am Aarti Dhole. I am from the Cosmos Cooperative Bank. I am looking after the IT operations and risk as well. So I am working as a CIO of the bank. Currently, there are a lot of projects which are now looking for some digital transformations. So I am also heading those digital transformations. Thank you.
Thank you, Aarti. Most welcome. Let's hear from Santosh.
Yeah, good afternoon. This is Santosh Mohile. I am head IT at SPC Cooperative Bank. So I head the infrastructure, security, applications, and now cloud being the new stream for digital. So this is a very interesting topic for this panel discussion, I suppose.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Santosh. Yogesh, please.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to Banking Frontiers. Myself, Yogesh Varunskar. I am Board of Director for Dombivli Nagari Sahakari Bank, and I look after IT security as a board member. Thank you.
Thank you, Yogesh, and welcome. Dr. Jatin Nayak.
I'm Dr. Jatin Nayak, GM and CEO of Surat People's Cooperative Bank Limited, and I associate with this bank last 32 years.
Welcome, Dr. Nayak.
Thank you.
And Vijay, please.
Thank you very much for the Banking Frontier for giving me a chance to be a part of this particular panel. Myself, Vijay Pawar. I am as a DGM IT for the PDCC Bank. Currently, we have started a huge, big migration project, CBS migration project. We are going ahead. So we'll be scheduled to be live very shortly.
Wonderful, Vijay. Thank you. Rajesh, your introduction, please.
Hi everyone. I'm Rajesh Avasthi. I'm with Tata Communication and I had the managed cloud and hosting services for Tata Communication. Happy to be part of this event.
That's great. Thank you to have you all in this discussion. So let's jump into the discussion right away. And since we're going to talk about cloud, one of the top issue in the mind of most people is security and cyber security. And there have been a number of discussions on this topic of cyber security. But what I want to bring to this panel particularly is, and this is a set of three questions. What is the changing nature and size of security threat, the impact of security on the financial sector? That is something we need to understand. Second, we need to understand what kind of money, technology, skilled manpower is required to keep up with the growing threat. And thirdly, we need to see if a bank was to adopt a cloud for certain kinds of solutions, then what would be the requirement in terms of manpower and money and technologies and all that to cope up with the rising threat. Once we have this picture, then at least some kind of meaningful analysis can be done, and then a roadmap can be planned to what extent one can go into the cloud for certain kinds of applications.
I can take a view on what's happening on the security, and see, because when you talk about cloud, the first thing which comes to our mind is the security aspect. So mostly the data part of it, and we being a regulated entity by RBI and other regulatory bodies, there are a lot of restrictions on how best we can make use of the cloud. But from my viewpoint, even if you want to do something on cloud, first thing you should have is a cloud strategy in place. What is your cloud strategy for your organization? You should have a cloud policy. This cloud policy should encompass all the various aspects of your overall IT organization, the very critical part of which is your security. Now, when talking about cloud, there are various types of securities. Your data security comes at the central place, then your physical security, network security, application security. So how do you address these different aspects of security? Because the threat vectors are changing, your threat landscape is changing. You don't know what kind of frauds will happen, what kind of hackers are always one step ahead of you. But considering all these, if you want to do this on premises, what kind of investments you are doing? You are doing investments into your technology, your solutions, your partners, scaling of your people. And if you look at those cloud providers who are matured into this space, probably public cloud like AWS, Azure, or the newer players, they have standard certifications which are globally accepted and very good standards of security. So considering those facts, comparing with what we can provide on premises versus as a strategy, what kind of data we are putting into cloud, there is a analysis to be done. What is the security threat versus what we are getting from cloud with all these security aspects in place from the cloud service provider. So I think it is a safe bet to put into cloud, considering what type of data and what application you are planning to put. Same rule cannot be applied to all types of applications. So there will be different yardsticks and different matrices which you need to apply and take a decision.
Correct. Thanks, Santosh. In my talks with a lot of banks, a lot of non-customer facing data and custom applications have moved to the cloud.
Yeah.
I did some R&D on my own through Google. I mean, not to try to pick up some statistics about cyber threats. Let me share those with you, and you can probably tell me whether the similar case is there at your end or it is different. So here are some statistics. 88% of organizations worldwide experienced spear phishing attempts in 2019. 86% of breaches were financially motivated, and only 10% were motivated by espionage. 45% of breaches featured hacking, 17% involved malware, and 22% involved phishing. So the highest is hacking among all these three categories. The financial services industry takes in the highest cost from cybercrime at an average of $18 million per company that was surveyed. I think many of the smaller organizations may not have been part of the survey. So this number would, in that sense, be a little higher. Again, another number, the average ransomware payment rose 33% in 2020 compared to 2019 for around $1 lakh each. 94% of the malware is delivered by email. Okay. 1 in 13 web requests lead to malware. More so probably on WhatsApp kind of thing, where, you know, information is flowing much faster. Nearly 2/3 of financial service companies have over 1,000 sensitive files open to every employee. This is not a common statistic. Financial services take an average of 233 days to detect and contain a data breach, whereas the global average is 207. Financial companies are actually taking more time to detect data breaches. This is not cybercrime, this is cyber theft. This is more of data breach that I'm talking of. So these are some of the numbers, interesting numbers that I could pick up. And maybe if you guys want to share something about the person, what do you think is the biggest threat in terms of phishing or hacking, or what is the typical ransomware amount, or the typical amount of time to detect a breach? Anything that you want to really share and sensitize the sector as such overall. Anyone?
Yeah, I would like to share something. See, especially in last three odd years, we could see that the hackers are primarily targeting small and cooperative banks. Okay, and this has been we had never thought of that hacker could go to tier 4 or tier 5 kind of cities, but at the end money is money, so the purpose of the hacker is getting solved. Okay, and that is the area where we will have to focus. Okay, so first we all are at the baseline that for hacker money is money and he can go to any bank, so uh, so I can be targeted anytime. So that is the baseline from where I should start and build my framework. Okay. Secondly, the biggest second threat is most of the cases it has been seen that it has been due to non-educated internal staff with respect to these all upcoming IT security things. Okay, unintentionally the leakage happens or the hackers get entry into the network. So these kind of things, two things are, I think, more vital with respect to, first we need to understand that it can go to anywhere, it can come to me any day, and second thing, my entire team has to be made aware every now and then to cope up with the all coming regulations and best practices.
Okay, okay, that's interesting. Dr. Nayak, you wanted to talk about skills.
Yes,
Can you
yes.
share something in terms of the size of the information security team, the kind of skills that they require to now have to cope up with all some of the threats that I've given in the statistics? What is your understanding the whole thing?
Manojji, just we have completed our Reserve Bank of India audit for the year 1920. Day before yesterday, suddenly they came and want to access my server. Our bank is running on ASP module. We have a CH program. So we haven't any access, direct access to server.
Physical access or digit, I mean, login
Access for reporting.
reporting. Okay.
They want to check what we have sent to them in data dump.
Okay.
So we expect that in terms of security points of view or CH software points of view, all dependency is there. So we have convinced them to that we have changed the software. We are going to change the software, but they take it seriously.
Okay.
Because nowadays what they want to come to your door and want to access your server to check what you sent to them.
Okay. Okay.
So looking to the changing scenario in technology, they cannot afford in terms of cost and in terms of hiring skilled people.
Okay.
So acquiring and updating this skill in house among internal team. While in sourcing, you have more control, allow your employee to feel more ownership and allow you to have more customization and flexibility for quick changes. Outsourcing firm most likely don't have those abilities. Reasons are greater agility and flexibility, opportunities for overall cost reduction, quality assurance, collaboration and knowledge sharing, control of critical functions and skill sets. Cons, we must consider cons also. And that is an operational risk, internal fraud, external fraud, employment practice and workplace safety, client, product and business practices, damage to physical assets, business disruption and system failures, execution, delivery, procurement, and management. Now outsourcing the people.
Okay.
The main reason for outsourcing your company's IT is cost.
Okay.
Outsourcing can help save a company money in the form of not having to hire additional employee, not having to increase the hours of your employee who are currently working and not having to buy new software with every advancement. The cost as per our understanding is around 5 to 8 lakhs per annum per person.
Okay.
Reasons are access to latest niche technology for outsourcing, access to specialized resources, drive flexibility and speed, leverage professional and well-established procedures, nullify recruitment hassles,
Okay.
free up internal resources, improve risk management, focus on core business, outsourcing the work associated with those skills, infrastructure, cloud hosting, e-commerce site design, website update, cybersecurity, two-factor authentication,
Hmm.
quality assurance testing, business applications. It depends on what you avail from service providers.
Right. Very interesting, very comprehensive list. Let me come to Aarti and ask you if you can give a macro picture in terms of what is the increase in IT expenditure overall over the last few years, year to year, and within that is IT security related expenditure, including technology, including salaries, including outsourcing. If you combine all of that, how is that ratio compared to the overall IT expenditure change?
Yeah. So coming to the cyber security, I will say first, cyber security expenditure should be a actually the in percentage of the IT expenditure. So we what at our organization level try to spend that it should be a at least 5 to 10% of the part which should be allocated to the IT security budget as compared to the IT expenditure. It depends on what are the projects which we are planned to do in that particular IT particular year, and what are the digital services we want to offer to the customers in that financial year. Decide the total IT expenditure, and cyber security should be a part of that IT. So we assign 10% of the total budget to the cyber security. So overall, my observation is over these 5 years, the IT expenditure has increased from 5% to 15%, and the IT cyber security budget has also gone to the up to the same level. So it is like increased by 2% every year, and now it is 15% of the total IT budget. So accordingly, we have planned to allocate the budgets to the cyber security.
Okay.
So this is the industry standard we are following. But I personally think that the cyber security also should be allocated. The expenditure should also be allocated in such a way that depends on which cyber security solutions you are actually looking for, whether your organization is at a entry level or mid level or at the large level. So accordingly you have to allocate the budget, because the breaches or the cyber securities types of cyber security breaches are like mostly we are facing the attacks due to the business email compromise or due to the phishing attacks. And then the next part is that we are also hearing that most of the financial institutions are actually facing the ransomware attacks, the next part, and then the data loss. So these are the commonly observed cyber security threats in the industry, and most of the breaches happen because of phishing mails only. So we have to think about how the phishing mails could be prevented and how the phishing mail should be treated with by the employees. So training needs to be the part of that cyber security program. So you have to allocate the budgets according to those programs to the organization at the organizational priority. So that is what I think so.
Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting. If I may come to Rajesh and ask you, I've shared some of the figures. As an organization, does your organization resonate with the kind of attacks and threats and increases that I have mentioned in those figures? And for the banking sector, is there any specific kind of approach that banks can take to protect themselves against these kind of rising threats and keeping the costs in mind?
Yeah, sure. I think all valid points, and I'll possibly start with where Mr. Santosh spoke about that it has to begin first with your own IT policy. And within IT policy specifically, what are some of the security controls that you would have? So security policy also becomes a very inherent part of your IT policy. And when you are doing that, some of the points which Dr. Jatin spoke about become very pertinent. That when you're doing so, there are so many tools and telemetry which is available on the security space, because as cyber threats are increasing, the mitigation tools are also coming out of that. Keeping up a pace with those tools and telemetry also becomes a challenge for any IT organization, be it in financial services or be it in any other space also. So where you need to start off is creating an IT policy which is conducive for your environment, which is in line with what your industry vertical needs. Like Santosh was talking about that in banking sector, there are regulatory requirements which are clearly called out by RBI. And RBI actually is talking about somewhere around, if I remember correctly, there are around 25 to 28 security controls which they say that you should have within your own data center to mitigate all the security, or most of the, I shouldn't say all, most of the security threat postures which could come in particular space. And that's where I think what Dr. Jatin was talking about is outsourcing becomes a logical choice, not only from a cost perspective, but also making sure that you are getting the relevant skill sets to manage those tools and telemetry that you may deploy to manage those security threats. Because it's no longer stating that I have a perimeter security which has been deployed and I'm secure. As most of the people were talking, Aarti was also talking about some of those numbers. A lot of time these threats comes from the internal systems. So you need to look at your 0-day threat attack management. You need to look at your management of distributed denial of attacks which may come in. You may have to work through some of the ransomware attacks. A lot of time with what happens is most of these organizations, when the application is created, there are certain ports which are opened during the application deployment time. Unless or until you close them, those are the vulnerable points from where the hackers or people who are ransomware attack hackers, they get into the system. RDP port is a very simple example of that. A lot of those threats are coming in from there. And that's where we need to work on. And I think what is very important nowadays is it's no longer about knowing what threats you have. It is about how fast you can mitigate those if you find something within those. And you pointed out those numbers also for BFSI segment also, that it is higher in comparison to the other. So a lot of BFSI customers have deployed security incident and event management system that lets you know what is the threat which you have. But in order to mitigate, that's where you see nowadays people talking of SOAR, which is security automation, basically, that you can do, operations automation and risk mitigation that you can do in an automated fashion. So how fast you can do, that is something which needs to be done. But as Dr. Chetan was stating, it is not only about tools and technologies, it is also about people and process. Because unless or until you take care of those things, you won't be able to manage these threats which may be coming in there. And also some of the things which Santosh was talking about, that yes, most of the public cloud providers, as the cloud providers like Tata Communication, they look at what are some of those controls that they need to have. You talk about ISO 27017 or 18, which is related to personal identifiable information security threats, or talking about SOC 1, SOC 2, or SOC 3 certification, even from a process perspective. Those are certain things which should be seen when you are looking at a cloud provider, and make sure that you have the right skill set either internally or externally with an outsourcing managed services partner to take care of those requirements. Those are some of the pointers which I thought I'll share.
Very interesting, Rajesh. You're right that everything begins with policy. I like that one point which you said, that the response has to be fast. In security, you cannot wait for the thief to leisurely come, steal what he wants, go away, and then you file an FIR. Let me come to Vijay now. Vijay, you are doing a new core banking project. How are you looking at the whole project differently in terms of security and also in terms of performance? Because your bank serving Pune is a very prosperous market. I'm sure it's growing also rapidly. The business opportunities are huge. More and more customers in the rural areas want to come into digital and electronic services. So what kind of performance have you planned for? And are we looking at security differently?
Yes, absolutely, sir. Actually, the point here is District Central Cooperative Bank. You know that the last side of candidate, we can say it up. Always they did not get the benefits of these particular implementations. So in my case, actually, what I have seen that one, the threats which are happening previously used to be at the node level, at the endpoint user level. Now these threats are growing and coming back to the centralized level. I have seen that the threats are coming in with respect to the functionality, with respect to the core code, and that's what we need to be very careful about that. Implementing these particular firewalls, the security measuring equipment, security compliance. These are all prominent, but DCCs, banks, primarily they are very much unaware about this kind of the awareness, security perspective which they need to implement. They are very much unaware about it, and the culture itself is like that, sir, actually. So what I have seen that even RBI is making kind of mandatory to implement the policies, and NABARD is also stating it up, but still I do see that only hardly countable diseases has implemented that kind of structure, because the people awareness across internal, and as Dr. Sir, Jatin Sir has mentioned, the threats has happened from internal. So the point here is the employee has to be educated. Madam has also mentioned that the enough training has to be given. So in my case, actually, we have taken up this CBS migration project, and we have identified with the help of consultant as a system integrator who is capable enough to implement these SOC services, NOC services, and the CBS migrations. They are doing it up. So in that way, sir, actually, as you rightly said, Pune is a big place, but our customers are from rural end. Our customers are not that much aware and that much educated about the particular banking practices need to be followed, the security protocols need to be followed, and that's what we need to do. At NABARD point of view, the strict restriction has to be done about the policies which they have to implement it up. Execution and implementation policy is most important rather than just a copy paste and bringing up the policy. I have seen the execution is very, very poor, sir, actually. And that is where we are lacking it up. Even though I have a very nice policy, but if at execution end, I'm unable to see the actual, numbers, actual data which are coming in and which are being followed, then I don't think so I'm following up that much security protocols. Right. So Mohile sir also has mentioned that the cloud computing, cloud policy should be a part of our actually policies, right? I would request that it should be an integral part of our IT policies. It should not be kept, because anyway we do outsource. We do outsource without knowing that whether to whom we are outsourcing, how serious that confidentiality data is there or not. That we did not know. And that's what we need to make some kind of compulsorily practice, that this policies has to be mandatorily as a part of protocol, as a part of even board level executions. It has to be there, sir. So okay. In my case, we are applying that particular security protocols as a part of policies, and we are trying to implement it.
But we are happy to see that awareness is increasing.
Yes.
At least at certain level, people see the need, even though implementation is a challenge.
Yes.
We really hope your team and your consultants actually put it all together.
Yes.
Make the actual implementation happen.
Correct.
What kind of things are really increasing the IT cost the most? so that the focus can go into controlling costs there and putting solutions in place there. Because you end up putting a solution where the cost is not increasing much, it really doesn't help that much. So some intelligence is required to be able to do that. Give us a sense. What is it that the increase is highest, so that whether cloud or something can leverage most effectively there?
Yeah, so Manoj, what you said is very right. So when you make a decision about putting any application on cloud, see, basically you have to make use of the properties of the cloud, which is elasticity, turnaround time, quickly deployment to the market. So that is one yardstick where you have a need to go to the market very quickly, and you decide that this application can be put in cloud very immediately, and you can get the benefits out of that. Second is a type of applications or workloads which you cannot generate in your own data center. They require a huge investment. They require a kind of technology to which we don't have access on premises, or we don't have the know-how or the skills. For example, analytics, data warehouse kind of things, where you can generate business intelligence from that. That makes a good case of cloud kind of technology, because in cloud we have three types. You have platform as a service, you have infrastructure as a service, and software as a service. So most of these cases where you can do a lot of cost saving and get the benefits of the technology falls into software as a service. I don't see much cost savings coming from infrastructure as a service, because what happens is if you are doing a lift and shift and using that infrastructure instead of from your own premises, then that doesn't make a very beneficial cost benefit. But definitely on software as a service, where technologies are at par with the latest technologies, and you can get benefits which you cannot have on premises. Even on the security side, you can implement those analytical tools. You can implement many of these in-house IT tools which can be run from cloud, where there is no threat of customer data being exposed. So those investments can be done on cloud, and they can be very well run on open source. So that kind of cost savings can be done. Yeah, because that option is available, because many of these Linux variants are available on cloud. And also support comes from the cloud provider, because it comes as a software as a service. Generally on the traditional way, a bank would spend more on CapEx, but when you move to cloud, your spending pattern changes to OpEx. So there are also savings where you don't have to heavily invest in year one, but you can keep on paying as per what your usage is happening. And also we have to do some study of those cloud service providers, because they have different pricing models depending upon whether you have a fixed cost model or you pay as you go or pay per use. So one has to understand these models and then make a choice. So these will definitely give cost benefits to putting those applications on premises versus on cloud.
Okay, thank you. That's very interesting. Arti, can you add anything to what Santosh has said? What kind of workloads make sense on the cloud nowadays?
I will also add that now the applications are becoming more space incentive because of the logging that is required. RBI said that in their cybersecurity framework that you have to log in everything. So when your applications need to be logged in, so it requires a huge space and a huge data analysis platform. So we can use the cloud services, infrastructure as a service, or software as a service for this kind of applications, and this will definitely cloud will definitely add the cost reduction to the IT expenses. Again, I will say that the most of the things that the business processes which need to be tweaked, that we can tweak, and then it can also save the IT expenses. So the transforming the business processes is depending on how effectively or how efficiently we can redesign that process, how effectively re-engineer that processes. So that also will save the IT expenses, and that will give a cost reduction to the total IT expenditure. And then also we can consolidate or automate or simplify some of the processes. Now coming to the regulations and compliances, if we do the regulation and compliances on time, like VAPT, patching of those things, so it will always save us in terms of the unnecessary expenditure in the security solutions. So that that will also save the IT expenses. So this is how we can reduce the IT expenses as well. Now coming to the cloud services, I will say that the services which are required, which can be treated as a non-CBS services. Let us say that email or the UAT kind of a services which we do not require to invest in the infrastructure on the on-premises, that we can lift and shift into the cloud services.
Okay.
So yeah.
Interesting.
This is how-
Thanks for those additional points. So I think between Santosh and Aarti, there's quite a list of things that it makes sense to reduce cost and use the cloud and minimize security. Rajesh, if I may ask you, based on all the existing banking customers that you have on your cloud, what kind of workloads are the most common? What kind of savings are the most easiest to generate? So at least what is the low-hanging fruit?
So I'll use a term which is used in banking, and I'm not an expert. They are better judge in that sense. But there are two systems which are spoken about in banking space. One is the systems of record, which generally is the core banking or the core solution which is there. And then you have systems of engagement which are there. Systems of engagement are the peripheral applications which either interact with the subscribers or the end customers they have, or with their partners who are working with them. Normally, what we have seen with most of the banks is that they first look at the systems of engagement to be deployed wherever possible on the cloud environment. So that's the first step which is generally taken up. It starts with obviously the website. That is the easiest thing to do. But eventually it gets into spaces like, because there is where you have unpredictable workloads and you want the elasticity of cloud. Like I'm just giving an example, you have internet banking or you have mobile banking interfaces of the systems of record. You don't know how many number of people are going to come to your website or for doing the internet banking today. Okay. And that used to be a challenge, and I'm sure Santosh, Vijay, Aarti, and all the others would also associate with what I'm stating. Elasticity that cloud brings in there helps them to engage. But one thing which has become very important in today's scenario, a lot of these businesses are also done on B2B2C. That means you have your partners who are interfacing with the consumers who are eventually taking these services. Integration between the systems which the banks have and the partners have becomes very important. And I'm sure a lot of people are evaluating API gateways, because otherwise connecting those applications becomes a humongous project in itself. And if you have more number of partners, it becomes a nightmare for you to manage. API gateways as part of the cloud services is one consumption which customers are looking at and are taking into account. When they are doing all this, they are also looking at whether the application which they have deployed on systems of engagement, are they cloud native? Because as Santosh spoke about, if you do a rehosting as is onto cloud, you may not get the cost benefit. Yes, you may get the elasticity benefit. You may get the benefits of CapEx to OpEx migration, but you may not be able to reduce your cost. The reduction of cost comes in when the application is migrated from a archaic n-tier architecture to a cloud native micro services based architecture. And that's where people look at deploying those applications, integrate with the API gateways, and those are the kind of applications that you'll see are first deployed on the cloud environment. And I'm taking this example from one of the banks, and I'm not naming here. They took a target that in 40 days they would migrate 40 applications. I'm sure they would have done humongous testing before stating that particular part, but that's the kind of scale and speed that you can talk about once you have clearly defined what you want to move, when you want to move. And that's the action that most of the banks would be taking. I'm sure the panel here would agree with some of the points which I've stated.
Yes, Rajesh, thank you. Yeah, I think neatly put it into systems of record and systems of engagement. I've heard those terms before, and they actually make a lot of sense. if I may come to Yogesh, and let's talk a little about compliance, particularly RBI compliance. To what extent is the technical work required to achieve all kinds of compliance becoming a challenge? And how does one go around, solving it rather than just throwing money at the problem?
The scenarios are changing day by day in terms of the customer requirements, in terms of RBI compliance, and especially the new features that the cooperative banks, or I would say rather all the banks that have to provide to the customers, that needs a dynamic provisioning, whether it is infrastructure, whether it is application services. So if my bank, earlier one of my panelists was saying, like, when it comes to infrastructure as a service and software as a service, in my opinion, the small and medium cooperative banks, they would also need infrastructure as a service, okay? Because this dynamic provisioning, I'll give you a classic example of UPI. Okay, the UPI transaction volume is increasing exponentially, and that is not a permanent. Okay, you can observe a sudden spike. Okay, so if your hardware is not scaled to service those kind of spikes, then definitely the customer experience is going to hamper. Okay, so to cater all these requirements and the compliance requirement and availability, the banks have three challenges. Okay, the availability, okay, the scalability, and of course the security. Okay, so considering these three challenges, I think small and medium banks, we will have to cater to both the services available, infrastructure as a service as well as software as a service, and definitely, as it was mentioned earlier comments, like I need to have a policy. Okay, like I can start just to get a comfort and to get that culture imbibed within my organization team, or getting the processes aligned. I can start with internal process or internal applications being hosted to the cloud. And once the culture gets imbibed, and then we can gradually scale up and go to cloud in step by step as per my the policy which is designed. But of course, as you said, as you asked, from the compliance point of view, it is difficult for my internal team to attend the compliance as the requirements are shooting up. Okay, so it is always a better option to leverage the strength of the cloud players like the Tata Communication or multiple players. Though they have a ready-made setup, they have the ready-made team, and which can scale up or scale down as per my requirements, which is, I think, a best choice for the banks.
Okay, thank you, Yogesh. So what is typically the ratio? Which one is growing faster? Do you need more people with application skills, or currently, or on an ongoing basis, do you need more people with technical skills to run the infrastructure and network and security, etc.? And then how do you manage the ratio?
Yes, absolutely. The point here is, sir, actually the banking particularly concentrating on their own day-to-day banking task. Their own main primary core business is to do the banking. And this banking definitely required the applications specific functionality and that skill across the branches. To maintain that particular banking functionality, we must have to have accessory functions, accessory modules, and as a infrastructure and all. These are all the core critical skills to be needed, right? But we don't expect them to be growing exponentially as like my day-to-day banking level functionality people, those who are doing their task regular basis, right? So in that way, it's completely a balanced decision in between these two. And as sir has earlier mentioned that the technical skills, I don't expect that it will be growing as such my functional skill. Both has to be maintained. And what I would say actually, the modules which are required to maintain the overall pace and overall services across the branches, these modules are critical. If it is a critical and sitting under the landscape of CIA, that means like confidentiality, integrity, and the availability. Based on that particular things, I need to decide whether I can pass on it to the to the cloud computing, or I do have to be on my on premises. So in that way, sir, these skills, technical skill, definitely a rare skill. I need to retain it up. I need to maintain them, but at the same time, I have to make sure that I have to be in compliance with the regulatory body, what they are expecting, the standards. The day-to-day threats are growing, the security threats are growing. The team also has to be aware about all these things. So this is completely a balanced decision between these two things, sir.
So thank you, Vijay. Aarti, if I may take Vijay's point forward and ask you, is it easier to outsource technical skills, or is it easier to outsource business functionality related technical skills? So infrastructure related technical skills versus business functionality related technical skills. Which has its, what are its ups and downs for both of them?
Taking Vijay's point further, I would like to add more. Like, so now what happened that we need in the earlier stages, we will be needing the domain as well as IT persons on our IT services forum. And now what happened, day by day, when the security and technical infrastructure as well as networking related things are growing due to the security aspects, the need of the technical skill sets are actually required, or they are having more demand on that. So how we have to look after the requirement is like, what are the services that are available in the market, technical resources available in the market, and what are the skill set available in the business or in our organization. So if we have that kind of a right skills in the IT or in our organization, then we can actually on premises we can have that services at our organization level. But whenever we don't have that kind of a services, we need to think about outsourcing those services to the vendor. So there are certain specialized skill set when networking devices comes into picture, or cyber security skill sets comes into picture. Those skill sets require a specialized skills, and then therefore we need not be we may require these resources to be taken from the outsiders, or otherwise we have to outsource those services to the move to these services to the cloud. So we have a hybrid kind of a approach in the organizations or in the industry. We look forward in that kind of approach will take forward, and that will be the right approach for all the organization. Mix and match of those things from skill set, business skill set from the organization, as well as the technical skill set and security skill set from the outsider. This hybrid kind of a solution will work for the industry. That's what I think. So
yes, thank you, Aarti. I want to extend your point a little further to Santosh. Santosh, is the demand for these skills going up and down, or they're fairly steady? Like, do you need project-based skills up and down, or how does it change? So does it make sense to develop as many skills in-house, or to outsource because it is very, seasonal?
So yeah, Manoj. So I would just take this point further. What Aarti ma'am had said. See, as a head IT or a CIO, everybody would love to have good technically skilled people in their team, because that is the backbone of their services. But we have to also acknowledge the fact that getting good skilled people on latest technologies is not available. They are very much in demand, and even if you try to train your own people, and by the time they become productive, chances are that they may leave the organization or get some other jump. So we have to take care of that attrition also. So at times it makes sense to outsource the specialized skills to a vendor who can manage the SLAs for you and also provide the required manpower. Talking about different skills in different areas. See, IT is not only about infrastructure. It is about infrastructure, about applications, data management, MIS, and security. These are the various verticals within IT. So you have to have vertical skills as well as horizontal skills, Because when you talk about projects, these projects are going to touch all these verticals. So you have to have people who can manage their skills of project management and also have a technical know-how. So we call them as run the bank and change the bank. Change the bank is where you do the projects. You bring in new initiatives, you talk about new technologies, and run the bank is the people who keep your lights on. You maintain their SLAs, you provide the service deliveries to your internal customers. So both types of skills are required. And as Madam said, we have to have a right mix of people where you can outsource certain services, but you have an oversight over them about the quality and quality assurance to your internal customers, and have key people in your organization who can manage this, both the streams of project delivery as well as service delivery. So that is my take on this.
Okay. Thank you, Santosh. Yogesh, if I may ask you, what has been your experience with delivering a certain level of service, delivering an SLA based on internal staff versus getting an SLA based on outsourcing for different kinds of projects?
Yeah. So if you ask me questions, this question around 2 years before, then I would be more comfortable that my internal team can very well deliver. Okay, and with respect to the SLAs and requirements based on the customer experience. But now, being multiple things are coming up, and it is scaling up horizontally as well as vertically. Okay, and where I have to have, if I have to be in the competition, I have to go by the SLA. It is very difficult to match this internally because you have a lot of challenges, and my main business is my CBS. Okay, all the ancillary applications or the services that my bank is offering, that is the secondary part. So I think we should go with as Aarti Madam suggested, we should go with the hybrid model, whereby I will have my core team. Okay, and my core team will where I can rely for my pure banking business. Okay, which I can rely on, and then I can have a SLA based engagement with the vendors. Okay, which can take care of my ancillary applications.
Okay, thank you, Yogesh. So Rajesh, having heard all the panelists speak about skills and outsourcing and insourcing, to what extent do your customers come to you asking for skills as along with the cloud-based solutions and services? So how do human skills fall into the picture for TCS, for Tata Communications?
I think all the valid points which were stated here, because yes, you can have a very stable platform, but if it is not managed well, it may not meet the business objectives that you may set within your organization. So having the right skill set becomes very important in that sense. And from Tata Communication perspective, our objective, and you must have heard that I stated that I manage the managed cloud and hosting business, because according to us, what is most important is the SLA that you deliver. And the SLA that you deliver is not only of the platform, but the solution which is deployed on that particular platform. And that's where the right skill set and the managed services becomes very important part of that engagement. Some of the points which Santosh stated are very pertinent. In my view and in my engagement, and I'm not naming that customer, but one of the customers stated that this is more like a partnership, and it is a partnership of equals. There are certain strengths which are there with the in-house IT teams. You may not have in umpteen numbers, and there are certain strengths which is there with the managed services or a cloud provider who's coming with that. You need to have a right mix of that. I'm not saying it has to be tilted only towards the cloud services provider, but creating a guideline is something which is well understood by the businesses who are running that business. Okay. So creating a policy guideline, or if you're, let's say, I'm taking an example of infrastructure outsourcing, which includes infrastructure as a service or platform as a service. The person who comes in would possibly come with the industry vertical knowledge. But your business is something which is known best to that set of customers. So having one person at least who knows what are the business applications and what are the business processes that I need to take care of to run my business efficiently is very important to be part of this outsourced team. Okay. And that becomes a winning team. And that's when some of the things which Santosh was talking about, it's not only about running the operations, it is also changing, because when you're coming with an outsourcing partner, you also need to look at how that partner changes over a period of time, because business is not going to be stable all the time. Okay. So whenever changes are required, that person becomes a bridge between what business needs and what this outsourcing partner has to do. So that becomes very important. And this person, when he or she is doing that particular part, would also have to think through what are the SLAs that I would need to meet the business objectives that I have. Okay,
Yes.
from an infrastructure perspective. So those are certain things which are very important when we are looking for an outsourcing partner, be it on the infrastructure space or on the platform space or even on the application space.
That's interesting. That's interesting. So for all of you, the work pressure will be, there'll be peaks where suddenly there'll be increase in workload for you as an individual, individually, right? So like in cloud, we say that we need a system that can handle these peak loads, and the cloud scales up for that. As an individual, do you find that these peak loads that are coming to you are predictable or unpredictable? So what I'm saying is, for you to deliver to your organization successfully, you need to have some visibility into the unexpected peak loads that will arise on you personally, whether it is at audit time or some new business project or whatever it is. So generally you find a lot of visibility that you can forecast your own personal workload. So I cannot take a vacation during this time because so-and-so, or does it happen with a lot of uncertainty? What is your experience? Who wants to start? Kathy.
Yeah, I would like to speak on this. As you rightly said, there are really a backup required for this, because when we say about the uncertainty in the infrastructure or networking or any other project, it will always have a solution. But for the persons like CIO, CTO, there is no solution. So actually, speaking on this, I will say that we have to be prepared for all the pressures first. The other thing that what we do is, like, we have to prepare a backup line for us, so that whenever there's such kind of a pressure is there, we can't avoid that. We have to delegate it to the right person, so that we can at least share that this thing. Another part is that we have to think some strategies which will actually or prioritize the given task and will manage the uncertain conditions, and will also help to manage the people as well. There are certain incidences like regulatory requirements has given certain reports or ask for certain data which need to be given to yesterday. So we have a pressure that we have to work a lot, and we have to extract the MIS and provide it to the auditors or to the regulatory authorities. In that case, either we have to work day and night. Then in that case, we do the things like we have to schedule the cron job or schedule the automated jobs, and that will work with throughout the night, and that will serve our purposes. So we have to actually think of the right strategies. One is the backup people, one is the automation of the jobs. Then another part is like delegating the work to the right persons and getting it done. So this kind of techniques we apply whenever there are certain uncertainties. But of course, we have to be on the pressure in all the uncertainties has to be addressed and sometimes it has to be addressed by certain strategies or by managing the people as well.
Interesting. Thank you. Who else would like to share some perspective?
Yeah, I would like to share that it's completely all together the management skill and the governance what we create it up normally in any of the project when we do it up planning. So as Madam has rightly shared, that we should have a delegations level to be defined very clearly. To whom I need to spoon feed, to whom I need to just give a task under the confidence that I will get 100% output. And accordingly, we need to train the people. That is most important. Some tasks are highly crucial, coming at last moment, 11th hour. And if it is a at most highest top authority coming from the stakeholder like directors and all, this task cannot be delegated at all. It has to be taken up by our own. So this task taken up to be on priority, whereas some tasks which can be manageable, can be just given by suggestion or guidance can be done, it can be delegated. So as Madam has rightly said, some automation tasks, some of the things which we need to balance it up. So these are all totally depend on individual to individual, how they define their task, how they define their actual overall hierarchy for the executions. It's totally depend on, but there are uncertainties. And this uncertainty, everyone has to handle by their own experience.
Thank you, Vijay. Thanks for those insights. Who wants to go next?
Yeah.
Yes.
Just I will say in banking terms, there is a term called as contingency. Okay, and now we are seeing this contingency in our IT environment also. Especially this pandemic has taught us multiple things. Okay, we never had thought of this pandemic and people working from home, multiple VPN users. So multiple things are getting explored and we are getting used to it. And I would definitely say thanks to pandemic, because we are getting flexible now. Okay, we are thinking in all other dimensions as well. Okay, and my policy will have all those areas covered which are beyond my thoughts till before the pandemic. Now this will have a comprehensive coverage of all such uncertainties, and I will be prepared for all these contingencies as a part of my policy.
That's interesting. So you have a wider umbrella to deal with, to think about. Wonderful.
So Manoj, just taking a cue from what Yogesh stated, I think he's very apt in stating that, because most of the BCP plans are planned for maybe 15 days or 30 days. They were never planned for such a long period of time. Okay?
Correct.
Because you would have your BCP plan. I'm talking from a technology and even people processes perspective. I think this event actually triggered a lot of those thinkings also and made us look into different areas also. But what is also important in these things is wherever you feel that similar things are coming up, I think when you scale, at some point in time, these repetitive interrupts which are coming in, you have to bring them as part of the processes and automate some of those processes wherever possible. I'm not saying it is possible in every location. As we just stated, if there are certain things which are required by director for a specific requirement, that won't be a repetitive thing. But wherever it is repetitive, you will have to create processes so that people within the organization or your extended organization as your outsourcing partner also is able to take care of some of those things in a regular way. I think that process also has to come in. And that's where I think most of the urban cooperative banks, like what we have here in the panel, would have seen over a period of time. When they started off their operations, it was okay with 1 man, 2 men, 3 men who were managing that. But over a period of time, you need to bring in that people and processes in between when you scale up. And that's what defines this thing. But as Indian, as we say, we thrive on chaos. I think those interrupts are certain things which would make us thrive more and our business would become better in due course on the line.
So Rajesh, I'm going to come to you with the last question about how do you handle peak pressures for CIOs and CTOs. But before you answer that, let me come to Santosh and see what he has to say about unexpected peaks in workload.
So I think So I think all of them have echoed the same sentiments. Everybody is suffering from high workload and pressure. Mr. Yogesh said we are connected because of pandemic and work from anywhere. So anyway, we were always connected online 24/7, but now we are officially connected because now we are doing work from home. And as ma'am said, it is very, very crucial to have a proper project plan proper processes and do delegation. So about this delegation, when you do a delegation, you need to identify the right people and also empower them to get them delegated. They should be able to execute those things. You should give them empowerment to do those things. Otherwise, just sending work down the line is not going to help. Also, there, in spite of whatever planning you do, there are going to be surprises at the last moment. And if they are coming from top, you have to comply with them. So some amount of planning or foresight needs to be done. And definitely, as Mr. Rajesh said, processes play a very, very important role into it. If you can automate those processes, definitely they are going to benefit you in long term. But if you know the process, you may reduce the number of ad hoc requests which will come to you. You will have a planning in place where you can have a particular TAT or a deliverable agreed with the end user. So then both the sides are not pressurized. The expectations are set. So certain things like this, if you can put in place, overall pressure can be reduced. But all said and done, the things continue the way, I mean, he said, chaos is what we like to do. So that is what I wanted to put.
Yeah, we're living in a VUCA world and it's not getting simplified anytime soon.
Yeah.
So Rajesh, you have any scalable, elastic, SLA level solution for CIOs and CTOs or some thoughts about it?
No, I think I covered up most of it in my points, which I stated wherever possible, if it is big. And Santosh pointed out very aptly there. It is also about meeting the expectation or exceeding the expectation or setting the expectation, all three of them. It's not only about this thing, because when you have to scale at point in time, yes, you will get those interrupts. As a services provider, for me, when the customers come back, or let's say there are 3 organizations who have some challenge at that point in time, for them, that is the most important thing, okay? Because their business is impacted at that point in time. As everyone was talking about, delegation becomes very important, and empowering the front end people becomes very important. At least as an outsourcing partner, that is very important. I can't be sitting at such a place where I would say that everything should come to me or people who are at a certain level only. Yes, they need to look into things which are very critical. The systems which are put in as an outsourcing partner need to have that escalation matrix very clearly defined with the timelines which are also agreed with that particular customer. That means if there is an agreed SLA between let's say Tata Communication and the customer, that within 2 hours or 4 hours, that particular priority 1 or severity 1 issue will be resolved. If it is not solved within the half time, then within the system, the tools and processes should be such that it should escalate it internally before the customer comes back. Okay, right. So that the person who is supposed to take that decision is knowledgeable that such a thing has not happened in the stipulated time, and if certain resources need to be put to make sure that that is taken care of, either by taking, let's say, level 2 or level 3 kind of people who are best suited for that particular thing, or also sitting at times on your own on that particular problem and resolve it for the customer. And keeping the communication open with the customer becomes very important, because no one likes last minute surprises. If it is taking time, and it has to take time, it is better that we communicate in time. As a services provider, I think that becomes very important. Yes, the endeavor is to meet the deadlines that are there, meet the SLAs which are there, but having that communication channel becomes very important in my view.
Great, thank you. Thank you all very much. We have passed our time, so may I close this session now with permission from everyone?
Yeah, thanks, Manoj.
Thank you, Manoj.
Thank you all very much. Wonderful discussion. I think the journey of simplification of problems is beginning now, thanks to COVID, so that organizations can now tackle greater challenges. So that's a great opportunity for all of you, and then for the nation as a whole. So wonderful. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Have a great day.
Thank you very much.